Hello students, in our paper Labor Laws with paper code BBA07, we are going to cover the topic of 4th unit under the Industrial Dispute Act 1947. The topic of today's presentation is scope, object, definitions and authorities which are given under Industrial Dispute Act 1947. I am Rakini Dikshit, working as Assistant Professor, School of Management, BBD University. Now, coming to the contents of this presentation, we have introduction, scope of the Act, objectives of the Act, features of the Industrial Dispute Act, the various definitions which are given in this Act, then the authorities under Industrial Dispute Act which control this industrial dispute, and finally the conclusion. Now, coming to the introduction, this act can be called as the Industrial Dispute Act 1947 and it extends to the whole of India. It came into force on the first day of April 1947. According to this act, industrial dispute means any dispute or difference between employers and employers, or between employers and workmen, or between workmen and workmen, which is connected with the employment or non-employment, or the terms of the employment, or with the condition of labor of any person. So we can say industrial dispute can be defined as any dispute between workmen and workmen, between employer and employer, and between employer and workmen. And this dispute can be connected with the employment or non-employment, or the terms of the employment, or with the conditions of labor of any person. Now, coming to the scope of the Act, this Act extends to whole of India as we had discussed and applies to every industrial establishment carrying out any business, trade, manufacture or distribution of goods and services, irrespective of the number of workmen employed therein. Then every person employed in an establishment for hire or reward, including contract labor, apprentices and part-time employees, to do any manual, clerical, skilled, unskilled, technical, operational or supervisory work are covered under the Act. So any establishment which hire or reward, including contract labor, apprentices, part-time employees for doing manual, clerical, skilled, unskilled, technical or operational or supervisory work are covered under this Act. This Act, however, does not apply to persons mainly in managerial or administrative capacity. Persons engaged in supervisory capacity and drawing more than 10,000 rupees per month of salary, or executing managerial functions, and persons subject to Army Act, Air Force and Navy Act, or those in police services, or officer or employee of a prison. So these persons are not included under the scope of this Act. The laws apply only to the organized sector. Chapter 5B, introduced by an amendment in 1976 in this Act, requires firms employing 300 or more workers to obtain government permissions for layoff, retrenchment and closure. A further amendment in this Act was done in 1982, expanded its ambit by reducing the threshold of number of workers to 100 workers. So any firm employing 100 or more workers have to obtain government permission for laying off, retrenchment and closure of its industry. Now, coming to the objectives of this Act, promotion of measures for securing and preserving amity and good relations between the employers and workers, investigation and settlement of industrial disputes, prevention of illegal strikes and lockouts, relief to workmen in the matter of layoff and retrenchment, promotion of collective bargaining. So these are the objectives of your Industrial Dispute Act 1947. It helps in promotion of measures for securing and preserving good relation between the employers, then investigation and settlement of industrial disputes, prevention of illegal strikes and lockouts. Then it provides relief to workmen in the matter of layoff and retrenchment, and it helps in the promotion of collective bargaining. Now, coming to the features of this act, this act extends to the whole of India, including the state of Jammu and Kashmir, as well as it encourages arbitration over the dispute between employers and employees. It provides for setting up of works committee as machinery for mutual consultation between employers and employees to promote cordial relations. Work committees work for both. They have members from both employer side as well as employee side, and they work for promoting cordial relations between employers and the employees. This act also paved the way for setting up permanent conciliation machinery at various stages, having definite time limits for conciliation and arbitration. This act emphasizes on compulsory adjudication besides conciliation and voluntary arbitration of industrial disputes. What do we mean by conciliation, arbitration and adjudication? These are some methods of getting your industrial disputes solved. We will discuss these methods in detail. Now, the Act empowers the government to make reference of the dispute to an appropriate authority, Labour Court, Industrial Tribunal and National Tribunal, depending upon the nature of the dispute, either on its own or on the request of the parties. The right to strike by the workers and lockout by the employees has been subjected to the restriction as laid down in the Act. The Act prohibits strikes and lockouts during the pending of conciliation and arbitration proceedings and in public utility service, and it empowers government to take adequate action. Now, coming to various definitions which are given under Industrial Dispute Act 1947, here we are going to consider only some important definitions which are going to be used in this act. First is your appropriate government. This definition is given in section 2A of this act, and it may refers to central government as well as state government depending upon the provision. Then coming to arbitrator, according to section 2AA, he is referred as an umpire. It means any person who is appointed to determine differences and disputes between two parties. That is, arbitrator act as an umpire, and he is appointed to determine differences and disputes between two parties. Then coming to definition of wages, it is given in section 2RR of this act, and it means all remuneration capable of being expressed in terms of money if the terms of employment were fulfilled, be payable to a workman in respect of his employment or of work done in such employment. It is exactly the same definition as it is given in the Payment of Wages Act 1936. Now, coming to the definition of industry. Industry's definition is given in section 2I of this act. Industry, according to this act, means any systematic activity carried on by cooperation between an employer and his workmen, whether such workmen are employed by such employee directly or by or through any agency, including a contractor, for the production, supplier or distribution of goods or services, with a view to satisfy human wants or wishes, with a motive to make any gain or profit, not merely spiritual or religious. So industry means any industry, any systematic activity which is carried on with the cooperation between employer and his workmen, and these workmen are employed either directly by the employer or through any contract, and they are engaged in production, supply or distribution of goods or services which are basically done for satisfying human wants or wishes, and generally for making gain or profit and not merely for spiritual or religious purpose. Now, coming to the next definition, that is of workman, given under section 2S of this act. It means any person, including an apprentice, employed in any industry to do any manual, unskilled, skilled, technical, operational, clerical or supervisory work for hire or reward. The terms of employment be express or implied, and there should be a contractual relationship between master and servant. So there should be a contract between master and servants. Workman can be any person, including an apprentice, and he is employed in any industry to do any manual and unskilled, skilled, technical, operational, clerical or supervisory work for hire or reward. The terms of employment be express or implied, and there should be a contractual relationship between master and servant. Now, coming to the next definition, it is of industrial establishment. According to section 2Ka, it means an establishment or undertaking in which industry is carried on, that systematic activity is being carried on. Then coming to the next definition, it is of public utility service. According to section 2N, it means any industry specified in the first schedule of Industrial Dispute Act 1947 can be declared as public utility service by government through a notification in the official gazette for a fixed period not more than 6 months for the first instance. So generally, what are the public utility services? These are described in this act, in the first schedule of Industrial Dispute Act 1947, as well as government through notification in the official gazette can declare any service as public utility service, but for a fixed period that should be not more than 6 months for the first instance. Now, coming to our next definition, it is of settlement. According to section 2P, a written agreement between the employer and workmen arrived in the course of conciliation proceeding, provided such agreement has been signed by the parties thereto in the manner prescribed, and a copy has been sent to an officer authorized by the appropriate government and the conciliation officer. So settlement is actually the agreement between the employer and the workmen, and which has been arrived in the course of conciliation procedure, and such agreement has been signed by both the parties, that is the employer and the workmen parties, and a copy has been sent to an officer authorized by the appropriate government and the conciliation officer. Now, coming to the various authorities which are appointed under Industrial Dispute Act for solving your industrial disputes, these are given in section 3 to section 7. These are your work committees, your conciliation officers, board of conciliation, court of inquiry, labor court, industrial tribunal and national tribunal. We will discuss these authorities one by one. Coming to the first authority, that is Works Committee. Now, Work Committee authority is given in section 3 of the Industrial Dispute Act 1947, and it is constituted based on appropriate government order, that can be your state government or central government order, and it is applicable to industrial establishment in which 100 or more workmen are employed on any day in the preceding 12 months. Where 100 or more workmen are employed in the preceding 12 months, work committees can be established over there. These work committees consist of representatives from employers and employees' sides, representative of employees, and that is workmen engaged in the establishment. Number of workmen representative shall not be less than the number of employers representative. Then representatives of workmen are selected in consultation with trade union. So while after consultation with the trade union, representatives from the employee sides are calculated. Then coming to the duties of work committee, its duty is to promote measures for securing and preserving amity and good relations between the employer and the workmen, that is secure and preserve good relations between the employer and the workmen, and to comment upon matters of their common interest or concern. Then coming to our next authority, it is conciliation officer. They are described in section 4 of the Industrial Dispute Act 1947. The appropriate government by notification in the official gazette appoint a specific number of persons as it think fit to be as conciliation officer. These conciliation officers may be appointed for a specified area or for specified industries in a specified area, either as permanent or for a limited period. So they can be appointed on area basis or on the industry basis. A conciliation officer shall be deemed to be as a public servant as per section 21 of Indian Penal Code 1860. This conciliation officer will be considered as a public servant. Now, duties. When any industrial dispute exists, the conciliation officer should hold conciliation proceedings in a prescribed manner without delay to have right settlement. These conciliation officers, if there is any kind of industrial disputes, these conciliation officers hold conciliation proceedings in a prescribed manner without delay for the settlements of that particular industrial dispute. Now, whether the settlement is reached or not, the conciliation officer must submit the report within 14 days of the commencement of the conciliation proceedings or within the date fixed by the appropriate government. Whether they have reached, the industrial dispute has reached any settlement or not, but the conciliation officer have to submit a report to the appropriate government within the 14 days or any date which is fixed by the appropriate government. Now, if the report submitted is satisfied to the appropriate government, it may or may not refer the dispute to any authority under the Act. If the government is not making any reference, it should record and communicate the reason to the contending parties. Now, coming to the Board of Conciliation, it is given in section 5 of the Indian Dispute Act 1947. Board of Conciliation, the appropriate government by notification in the official gazette constitute a Board of Conciliation for promoting the settlement of industrial dispute only. Now, this board consists of a chairman and 2 or 4 other members as the appropriate government thinks fit. So, this board can consist of 1 chairman will be there and 2 or 4 other members will be there. The chairman shall be an independent person unconnected with the dispute. He shall be independent person who is not connected with the dispute. The other members shall be persons appointed in equal numbers to represent the parties to the dispute. The person appointed to represent a party shall be appointed on the recommendation of the parties. For 2 or 4 other members, these are generally members from the parties in dispute. The appropriate government appoints a fit person as it thinks if any party fails to make a recommendation within a prescribed period. If the party does not appoint itself, the appropriate government will appoint any member of the party as the associate to the chairman. A Board of Conciliation can act only when a dispute is referred to it by the government. This Board of Conciliation will act for the settlement of the industrial dispute if the dispute has been referred to it by the government. Now, what are the duties of the Board of Conciliation? When the dispute has been referred to a board, it will investigate the matter, It will investigate the dispute affecting the merits and right settlement of the dispute without delay. Whether settlement is reached or not, the board must submit the report within 2 months of the date on which the dispute was referred to it. If no settlement is arrived, the government may refer the dispute to the Labour Court, Industrial Tribunal or National Tribunal. The time for submission of report may be extended by such period as prescribed by the government. Now, the report of the board shall be in writing and shall be signed by all the members of the board. The report submitted shall be published by the appropriate government within 30 days from the receipt. A board of conciliation can only try to bring about a settlement. It has no power to impose settlement on the parties to the dispute. All members of the court shall be deemed to be a public servant under section 21 of the Indian Penal Code 1860. Every inquiry by a court shall be deemed to be a Now, coming to the next machinery, that is court of inquiry. Now, section 6. The appropriate government by notification in the official gazette constitutes a court of inquiry into any matter relevant to an industrial dispute. Now, the appropriate government can constitute a court of inquiry. Now, a court of inquiry consists of one independent person or of number of independent person as the appropriate government may think fit. Court of inquiry consists of 2 or more members. One of them shall be appointed as chairman. The court of inquiry can act under a prescribed quorum even at the absence of chairman. If the service of the chairman is seized by the government through notification, the court shall not act until a new chairman has been appointed. Now, all members of the court shall be deemed to be public servant under section 21 of the Indian Penal Code 1860. Every inquiry by a court shall be deemed to be judicial proceedings. A court of inquiry has same power as a civil court under the Code of Civil Procedure 1908. The court has the right to appoint one or more person having special knowledge of the matter of the dispute as an advisor. So, this court can appoint a person having special knowledge of the matter of the dispute as an advisor. Now, what are the duties of the court of inquiry? A court shall inquire into the matters referred to it and report to the appropriate government within a period of 6 months from the commencement of the inquiry. The report of the court shall be in writing and signed by all the members of the court. Members are free to record their dissent. The report submitted shall be published within a period of 30 days of its receipt by the government. Now, coming to the Labour Court, it is described in section 7 of the Industrial Dispute Act 1947. Labour Court consists of one person only to be appointed by the appropriate government. A person shall not be qualified for appointment as presiding officer of a Labour Court unless he has been a judge of High Court. He should have all these qualifications. He has been as a district judge, additional district judge for a period not less than 3 years. He has held any judicial office in India for not less than 7 years. Now, what are the duties? Educate upon the industrial dispute relating to any matter specified in the second schedule. When an industrial dispute has been referred to a labour court for adjudication within the specified period, it should submit a word to the appropriate government. It shall be published in such manner as the appropriate government thinks fit within a period of 30 days from the date of its receipt by the appropriate government. Now, coming to Industrial Tribunal. The appropriate government, by notification in the official gazette, constitute one or more industrial tribunals for the adjudication of industrial disputes relating to any matter which are specified in 2nd and 3rd schedule of this Act. The tribunal consists of one person to be appointed by the appropriate government. A person shall not be qualified for the appointment as the presiding officer of an industrial tribunal unless he has been a judge of high court, he is or he has been a judge of high court, he has been a district judge, additional district judge for a period of 3 years. Now, no person shall be appointed to or continue in office of a presiding officer if he is not an independent person. Now, coming to national tribunals. The central government, by notification in the official gazette, constitute one or more national industrial tribunal for the adjudication of industrial disputes involving question of national importance. These national tribunals will consider the questions of national importance, just such disputes where question of national importance is there, which are of such nature that industries are more than one state are likely to be interested in or affected by such disputes. And if such disputes are going to affect the industries which are situated in more than one state, then matters appearing in 2nd and 3rd schedule. A national tribunal consists of one person that should be appointed by the central government. A person shall not be qualified for appointment as a presiding officer of a national tribunal unless he is or has been a judge of high court. Now, what are the duties of the National Tribunal? It shall submit its award to the appropriate government within a specified period if an industrial dispute is referred to an industrial tribunal. Then the award shall be in writing and shall be signed by its presiding officer. The award shall be published by the appropriate government within a period of 30 days in a manner as the appropriate government thinks fit. As it is quasi-judicial body, it must serve notice upon the parties to the reference by name before making any award. Now, when an industrial dispute is referred to the National Tribunal for adjudication, it shall submit its award to the appropriate government. The award shall be in writing and shall be signed by the presiding officer of the National Tribunal. It shall publish the award within a period of 30 days from the date of its receipt by the central government. Now, procedure and power of authorities. These authorities, these work committees, your national tribunals, then your conciliation officers, then board members, then labor court, your industrial tribunals, national tribunals, what are their procedure and powers. Now, section 11 provides that every conciliation officer or member of a board or court or presiding officer of a labor court, industrial tribunal or national tribunal, after giving notice, can enter the premises occupied by any establishment to which that dispute relate and follow such procedure as the arbitrator or other authority concerned may think fit. They have the same power as are vested in the civil court under the Code of Civil Procedure 1908 while trying a suit in matters like enforcing the attendance of any person and examining him on oath, compelling the production of documents and materials, objects, issuing commission for the examination of witnesses, and in respect of such other matters as may be prescribed. So these authorities have the same power as the civil court has under the Code of Civil Procedure 1908, and in the matters like enforcing the attendance of any person and examining him on oath, compelling the production of documents and material objects, issuing commissions for the examination of witnesses, and in respect of other such matters as may be prescribed. So these are the procedure and parts of authorities. They are just equivalent to the civil code under the code of civil procedure. Now, an assessor or assessors may be appointed by the Conciliation Board, Labour Court and Court of Inquiry, Industrial Tribunal or National Tribunal for advice having special knowledge on that matter. So Conciliation Board, Labour Court, Court of Inquiry, Industrial Tribunal and National Tribunals can appoint an assessor or assessors who can who have special knowledge of that matter and who can advise these authorities. Now, the conciliation officer may enforce the attendance of any person for the purpose of examination of such person or call for and inspect the document. The conciliation officer has the power to enforce the attendance of any person for the purpose of examination of such person or call for and inspect the documents. The Conciliation Board, Labour Court and your Court of Inquiry, Industrial Tribunal or National Tribunal has the full power to determine to what extent, by whom and subject to what condition costs are to be paid. So, they determine the extent, they determine who will pay and the subject to what conditions costs are to be paid. Thus, it is seen that Section 11 has given wide power to Conciliation Board, Labour Court, Court of Inquiry, Industrial Tribunal or National Tribunal in the settlement of industrial disputes. Now, coming to the conclusion, thus we can conclude that the main purpose of the Industrial Dispute Act 1947 is to ensure fair terms between employers and employees, workmen and workmen, as well as workmen and employers. So these disputes can arise between your employer and employees, workmen and workmen, and your workmen and employers. Now, the objective of the Industrial Dispute Act is to secure industrial peace and harmony by providing machinery and procedure for the investigation and settlement of industrial dispute by negotiation. So, this was all about your scope, object, definitions and various authorities which are under the Industrial Dispute Act 1947, which are working for the Industrial Dispute 1947. Thank you, class.